Oh. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the RC Adventure Channel. This is day 4 of the Alaska to Florida road trip, and we've stopped in Watson Lake because, yeah, we've been on the road all day. It's time to take a break. Yeah, there's mosquitoes here, yeah, and gnats and all kinds of bugs, aren't there? But also, right behind me here is the Signpost Forest, and Nathan and Brian have already been back there exploring a little bit.
And I found a license plate on there that said Noble.
Found a license plate that said Noble. We're gonna have to go check that out. What do you think, Brian? Should we do a little crawling around the Signpost Forest? Yeah. We got a little first-person view action going on here, so yeah, let's get going. We'll go check it out. Here, go for it. What? You rolled over already? All right, now you can go. Don't run into anything, okay? Hometown Pride, Oklahoma. Noble. Nice, I like that one. So I don't know all the details off the top of my head here, but narrator me is about to step in and fill you in on everything and where this came from. The story of the Signpost Forest is really a story of the human side of the construction of the Al-Can Highway. First about the highway though. The first serious proposal for a road to connect Alaska to the rest of North America came in 1929. While it was determined that such a road could be built economically, no one could agree on the exact route and, more importantly, who would pay for it. Sounds like politics to me. Fast forward to December 7th, 1941, and the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor. The Japanese followed this up the next day by launching a massive campaign across the Pacific and making huge territorial gains against the Allies. This, along with reports of Japanese vessels in Alaskan waters the following January, led to the very real fear that sea lanes between the U.S. mainland and Alaska could be cut off. A fear that must have felt very real when the Japanese bombed a Dutch harbor on June 3rd and 4th, then took control of the islands of Attu and Kiska in the Aleutians on June 6th of 1942. With this in mind, it was promptly agreed that a road would be built and the U.S. would pay for it and then turn it over to Canada after the war. Funny how little motivation can aid in the decision-making process, isn't it? Construction began on March 9th, 1942, with 10,000 men from the Army Corps of Engineers starting from 4 locations, each going out in opposite directions. On September 24th of that year, the last two ends met up when these two soldiers nearly collided head-on in the dark. If you're thinking some E4 type shenanigans were going on, you'd actually be mistaken. See, they actually had to drive with their headlights off in the dark to avoid being seen by enemy reconnaissance aircraft that may or may not have been flying overhead. Anyway, construction finished about a month later on October 28th. It's important to note, though, that the first road had more in common with a four-wheeling course than the roads that you and I are used to driving on today. Even when it was open to general vehicles in 1943, there were still a lot of steep grades, poor surfaces, switchbacks to climb and descend hills, few guardrails, and most of the bridges were actually made from logs. On the upside, the original 1,700-mile stretch took just 234 days to complete. That's about 7¼ miles of road built per day. That's impressive. Carl Kenneth Kenny Lindley was born the 11th of 12 kids on January 24th, 1919. He grew up on his parents' dairy farm in Danville, Illinois, where he helped tend to the animals and deliver milk to local residents. He also worked various other jobs around town during his youth, such as at a gas station, a restaurant. He fabricated parts for a local coal mine and made shoes. He was inducted into the U.S. Army on February 14, 1942, as a private. On April 25th, he left the U.S. by rail with Company D, 341st Army Corps of Engineers out of Fort Ord, California. Arriving in the city of Fort St. John, Canada on May 14th, Company D got to work building the southern portion of the Al-Can Highway. As they worked their way north, they had to carry all their personal gear in rucksacks, which wore grooves into the men's backs. They were also plagued by accidents, mosquitoes, no-see-ums, yellow jaundice, and poor living conditions. Yeah, seriously, these guys were sleeping on blankets on the ground until about November, when the Army finally issued them sleeping bags. It was near mile marker 627 where Private Lindley was helping build a loading platform for dump trucks when one of the trucks ran over his foot, smashing it. He was taken to the Army Aid Station at Watson Lake, Yukon Territory, to recuperate. While there, he was tasked with repairing and painting a directional post that had been damaged by a bulldozer. Yeah, the guy gets his foot smashed by a truck. What do? They send him to the aid station, they slap a cast on it, and they send him back to work. And here 20-year-olds today complain about their job at the fast food restaurant being too demanding simply because their boss wants them to show up on time. But anyway, thinking of home, and probably of his father, who he had just found out had passed away a few months prior, he added a sign pointing toward his hometown to the post, Danville, Illinois, 2,835 miles. Seeing this, others began to add their own hometowns, unwittingly starting a tradition and a tourist attraction known today as the Signpost Forest at Watson Lake. After constructing the highway in a brief furlough, the 341st and Private Lindley shipped out to Europe. While there, the skills and reputation he and his unit earned while building the Al-Can Highway put them in high demand for building and repairing roads, bridges, stockades for POWs, railroads, supply depots, and on occasion in infantry and reconnaissance roles, though it appears Private Lindley never participated in the last two. After the war, Private Lindley returned to civilian life in his hometown, where he spent the next 30 years working at a printing company. He passed away on December 20th, 2002 at the age of 83. Today, the Signpost Forest has over 72,000 signs. For those of you not wanting to travel to the Yukon Territory, a replica Signpost Forest was constructed in Danville and dedicated in Carl Lindley's memory in 2010. If you'd like to learn more about the Signpost Forest and the Al-Can Highway, just check the description for links. All right, Brian, so what'd you think of that Signpost Forest?
Cool.
It was cool? Okay. Yeah, well, hey, as much fun as that is, yeah, I don't like feeding the mosquitoes that much, and they are definitely out in force. So we're going to head across the street to the Northern Lights Center. Let's go see what that's all about, huh? How's it going? Video selfie. We get Brian in on it too. What's that thing? What's that long gray thing here, Nathan? What's that? It says a Black Bryant 5 quarter scale rocket. What? What'd you find? What'd you find? Brian, you found something? And what's that? What is that? Huh? What is it?
Spaceship.
Spaceship, a space shuttle. Hey, what do they got over here? Chris Hadfield is really just one in a long line of Canadians to have become astronauts at NASA. Also, there's a lesser known fact that a lot of the aerospace engineers at NASA back in the early days came from Canada. You know, sure, everybody knows about guys like Wernher von Braun, you know, the other German rocket scientists that came over, but the Canadians made a huge contribution too. In fact, I've talked to several historians that say they don't think we would have made it to the moon by Kennedy's end of the decade timeline were it not for the contributions of those Canadian engineers, if we even made it at all.
Eddie.
What?
Just a quick one. Will the moon ever hit the Earth?
Will the moon ever hit the Earth? No. No? Why? Why? Huh? You think it's going to?
No, I'm just saying.
I'm just wondering. No, the moon is going the other direction, Nathan. All right, so apparently next up there's some kind of show on the Northern Lights. Let's see what this is all about. Holy crap. Wow. What do you guys think? What is that screen, huh? Is that crazy?
Yeah.
Kind of puts my computer screen to shame now, doesn't it?
Once upon a time, there was no time, or anything else. Then, in an amazing incident about 12 billion years ago, what had been without form and void became a dazzling universe of energized radiation and light.
Well, that was a really darn cool show. It's not really the kind of thing you can record on a GoPro, of course. Plus, you know, it's their intellectual property. I'm not going to rip off other people's stuff. That's not what I do. But, you know, if you ever find yourself driving the Al-Can, you're passing through Watson Lake, I'd highly recommend stopping here just to check it out, because that big dome screen is just super cool. Plus, you know, the whole Signpost Forest and the story behind it and all that's a fun thing to stop and check out. You know, get out and stretch your legs a little bit. But hey, you know, anyway, I gotta hit the road. So if you like this video, I sure would appreciate a thumbs up. If you want to see more like this, hit that subscribe button and the bell icon will let you know when my next video's up. Well, till next time, remember, not everybody who wanders is actually lost. Some of us are looking for airplanes, cars, that kind of thing.